Hello, Yakri here with my revised Dominions 4 overview. I decided I would redo this a little bit since I needed to correct an audio issue anyway. And I wanted to go over the differences between Dominions 4 and Dominions 5 in a bit more detail. So, before I jump into that, though, I want to give those of you who are unfamiliar with the series a little more information on it. So, Dominions 5 is a 4X strategy game that mostly ignores the parts of a 4X strategy besides invading and conquering your enemies. You know, there's a bit of research, there's some economy, there's expansion, that's all very important, and then beating your enemies in the really complicated battle simulation that the game has is the most important aspect of the game. There's also a pretty in-depth, like, sort of character creation that I'm going to show you in a minute. So, and Dominions 5 is a what's the word for it? Mythology themed game, right? So we've got lots of very familiar things if you know a bit about history and mythology. So, you know, you've got demons and giants and elves and all that good stuff. A lot of stuff from a little bit more true to life type folklore. With often it has its own like Dominions twist that the developers have put on it. So I guess the inspiration would be, I would call the inspiration true to life, but the actual end result is a bit different from the actual legends and whatnot. Okay, so the character creation, as it were, looks a bit like this. So first you're going to select your nation, right? There are, I think in Dominions 4 there were 76 nations. I think we're up to 78 or 79 now. We might be at 80. So there are a huge number of nations. Most of them are fairly distinct. And a few of them, you know, there's going to be some similarities and overlap in the end, but they're mostly quite different. And some of them are radically different. Like we've got who's super different here? Well, you know, for comparison, you've got Niflheim here, right? So these are Jotun giants, right, of Norse mythology. And you could compare that to Arcosaphale, which is essentially ancient Greece, right? With some mythology thrown in. But, you know, you're pretty much playing Greece. And over here you're playing actual giants, right? So it's a fairly different you get a fairly different experience depending on your game. Rus is just actually Russia. So again, I'm going to select Rus for this little demonstration. Can I give you? But how do I give it? All right, here. This is good. So to give you an idea of what the game looks like, you know, you've got all these different commanders. Some of these are going to be mages, right? This guy has air magic and astral magic and nature magic, and he can shapeshift into a werebear and recover from injuries and all that good stuff. So if you're not really familiar with the game's like, you're pretty much going to start off as the god of a nation, and you have access to these commanders and these troops down here, and you have to expand across the land, gain control of all the thrones of Dominion, and ascend to become the next, you know, true god of the world. And you're gonna have to fight all the other players or NPCs if you're playing in single player to do that. And there are, like I said, a huge number of nations for you to choose, and there's a little bit of economics considerations, which you can see here. Your dominion as a god has these different effects on it, and your god, which you have a variety of options, these change based on the nation you choose. This is a fairly limited selection of the total pool of like god chassis is what we usually call them. And you can get different magic paths for your god, and then the gods have different unique abilities like trampling or regeneration. You can see more like the Tiwaz of War got a new one in Dominions 5, Combat Caster, so you can cast spells while in melee combat more effectively, since he's supposed to be a bit of a warrior. You can play, and a lot of these are somewhat familiar if you know a bit about mythology, like Son of Fenrir. Any other really famous mythological figures here? Oh, look here, it's Odin. We got Odin. Everybody's familiar with Odin, right? Okay, so I think I'm not going to go into too much detail on what all these things do, because I'm going to do some new tutorial series for Dominions 5. Not a lot has changed from Dominions 4, but I think it's worth revisiting. I do have a tutorial series for Dominions 4 if you want to get an idea of how that plays. But let's talk about the actual differences, right, between Dominions 5 and Dominions 4. So We'll leave the screen up because we're going to talk about this in a second. But first, let's talk about movement, right? So movement of your troops on the game is going to be a little bit different. In Dominions 4, troops had a certain number of map moves, right? And then certain terrains would stop you from using all of your map moves, unless you had a way to ignore it, right? And it was fairly... it was in fairly large increments, right? So the fastest map moving units would have like map move 3. There are some exceptions, but in general, the fastest moving units would have map move 3. That's what flying units would get as well. And you could move up to 3 squares. But if there's any sort of annoying terrain in the way, you're not going to be able to do that. You're only going to be able to move like 1 square, unless you have the special trait to ignore that terrain. Now we have something that's a little more granular. You have a certain number of map move points, and it takes a certain number of points to move between, say, 2 normal plane squares, and it takes a higher number of points to move over terrain controlled by an enemy nation, terrain that is wooded or swamp or snowed over, etc., etc. And we've got a larger variety of abilities to negate those penalties. The end result is that in general, it's more common for you to actually be able to move 2 or 3 tiles in a single turn, which was very uncommon in Dominions 4. It's much more common in Dominions 5. And you can actually move like over a tile and into enemy territory, which was not possible before, if I recall correctly, which is a pretty big deal in terms of changing how the game is balanced. In general, everyone's going to be a little more mobile and a little better able to like get their armies around and fight each other. I think it's a pretty good change overall. It makes the game feel a lot better and probably play a little bit faster, so I'm pretty happy about that. Research has changed. If you're not familiar, you're probably going to want to go and watch a tutorial on how research works in the game or try it out for yourself. I'll probably be showing that off later in another video. But to research, you used to be able to divide the research points that you had up among different magical schools and research several at once. Now you can only do 1 school at a time, 1 whole level at a time. So, you can research from Conjuration 0 to Conjuration 1, and then you can research from Enchantment 0 to Enchantment 1 at a time, and you can queue them up. And that's all there is to it. There's no splitting your focus anymore. I don't think it really makes a big difference for the most part. Maybe it's going to hamper nations that are really good at researching fast and want to get a couple schools in like a single turn. But I don't think it matters too much. Queuing up research is kind of nice. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Roads. Previously, you could build roads wherever you had fortifications built. Now roads are pre-built. They're in the game world on certain tiles. Certain tiles have roads, and you can't add more, right? So it doesn't make a huge... I'd say actually it does make a bit of a difference. There are good movement tiles now, essentially tiles with roads on them that are very handy, but you can't build them. They're just around, so they're going to be strategically useful. Okay. What else do I need to cover in here? Okay, we're on to what I'm on this screen for, which is bless effects, right? So blessings in Dominions 4 were pretty linear, and what you did, or I don't know if linear is the right word, inflexible is maybe a better choice of words. They were very inflexible. So let's see. Why don't I just max this guy out? So Dominions 5 has, in Dominions 4, if you got like, as you leveled something up, let's go back, let's actually move these back down. In Dominions 4, as you leveled something up, you would get more and more blessing points. So you'd have no blessing at all at Fire 2, right? And you move your Fire Magic up to 4. Now you get +2 attack skill. And you move it up to like 6, and now you've got +3 or 4 attack skill, I forget. You move it up to Fire 9, you get the Major Bless effect, which was Flaming Weapons. That's how things worked in Dominions 4. Now in Dominions 5, you get points that you can spend, right? You start getting points at 4 points in a magic path on your Pretender, and as you increase, you get more and more points, right? And capping out at 10. So and some of these give you more points than others. So let's see, as we move these along, I'm gonna bump them all up so you can see all the magical effects. You'll see right here that our astral magic actually... Oh wait, was that a bug? Alright, I'm not actually sure how that works. I'm gonna have to figure this out later. On some Pretender, I was getting more points in certain schools than others. I kind of wonder if that was a bug or if it was actually a unique thing. I'm not sure. They don't document the changes in very great detail, so I'm gonna have to figure that out for myself, and maybe I'll make a comment about it or put it in the video description. So, and here we can see all the blessing effects. Previously, there were basically 2 blessing effects per magic school, and that was it. And you got those 2 effects by leveling up that magic school, and that was all there was to it. Now you can spend points to get these different options from all these different blessing schools. Now, I'm not going to go over every single one in this video. I will do a video especially on that later. But there's some pretty notable ones. Like, you've still got flaming weapons. Awe is a really powerful new one from fire. Thunder weapons is pretty impressive from air magic. Quickness was there before from water, but frost weapons is kind of neat. Water walking is pretty neat. Fortitude from earth magic, take half damage from all physical weapons. Pretty good from earth. I'm not sure how I feel about larger. Making your sacred units bigger, I think it might actually be bad for you. I think it might make your units worse. So I think like maybe they need to increase the benefits, like 30% HP. I'm not sure that's good enough. Maybe a flat HP and 30% HP. I don't know. Ethereal is insanely good when you can get a benefit from it. Fear, insanely powerful. Regeneration was there before and good. Berserker is new and interesting. I like that. Yeah. Blood spells, blood vengeance is kind of, I don't want to say OP, game changing maybe. Yeah, for the nations that can make good use of it. Strong, what was it? Blood surge is an interesting one. You get like a buff after you kill a unit. Okay, so that's how blesses have changed, and I think it's a really good change for the game because you can do a little mix and matching, and overall they're much weaker than they were in Dominions 4, but they're also much more interesting. So that's kind of cool. Let's see, what else do I need to do? Oh, all right, now we need to go into game. So let's just select something I can slap out pretty easily. I would semi-recommend this. I haven't tested it really in detail, but an Awake Earth Serpent with Fortitude for Rus is pretty good. Let's do like boop boop. Okay, well I can't be quite that badass, huh? Can I afford that? I haven't really thought this through too much. Yeah, this is probably like acceptable. Something like some kind of build like this, probably okay. If I really don't care about my magic piling, that's probably good. That's probably what I would do. I'm not convinced that's the best build, but it's acceptable. I'd call it acceptable. You'll win. You'll be able to win versus AI, no problem with that. This build, I think. And so let's start with the game. So what I want to talk about for in-game here, we're pretty much done. There's only a few other things, which is recruitment points is this new thing that they've added. So you need recruitment points to build your regular units. They're based on the population of the province, almost entirely. I think some of these increase recruitment points. Yeah, order increases your recruitment points, and so whatchamacallit. It's not. This one isn't chaos per se. It's called turmoil. Turmoil will reduce your recruitment points, and then you have commander points, right? Which are I think determined by the level of the fortification you have. Yeah. Like you get base 1, and then this, if you get enough, once you get your fort upgraded far enough, you get 2 points. And that's the other thing about building is you have to build up your forts bit by bit. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to show you. So another thing, so that's recruitment. Am I reading anything? Yes, recruitment and building. So recruitment, it pretty much works exactly the way I just said. There's this other limiter on your unit recruitment. It's not going to matter most of the time very much. Unless you had turmoil and you have a province with a low population, then it might matter to you quite a bit. But if you have decent scales and stuff, it's not going to change how the game is played very much. Just in some cases you're going to have a hard time with it. So another neat thing is that pretenders get the benefits of their blessing. I can't remember if Earth Serpent had some of these, but it wouldn't matter if Earth Serpent didn't have slashing, blunt resistant and pierce resistant before. It would now, because you've got the Earth Blessing that does that, and that makes you take half damage from normal weapons, which makes this pretender an absolute beast in combat. Well, that's embarrassing. It just straight up died. Of course it did. Of course, it just immediately died as I'm trying to just show how awesome it is. All right, well, that was probably a mistake. I assume there's heavy cavalry there. I didn't really look. You know, what the hell, man? Light cavalry, cataphracts. Of course, that's why. So, that's annoying. Let me just go through a couple rounds of recruiting these guys in the background so I can show off building. So how building is going to work is that you previously would build palisades and forts in not a single turn, in a single action, right? So you'd say, all right, start building a fort, start building a palisade or whatever, and it would build a palisade over a certain number of turns, and then you'd have the palisade, or if you could build forts, you'd build forts, right? And you would have whatever the highest level of fort you can build is, like immediately, right? No other effort required from you, and it's built. Now what you have to do is you have to build up towards your highest level of fort, whatever that is, right? So if I want to build a palisade, well, I can't build that. A fortified village is actually a lower tier thing than a palisade is. So I start building the fortified village, and that's going to take me 3 turns. And at the end of 3 turns, I'm going to be able to build something more advanced. And I believe this really matters for is going to be in the late age. You're going to have to build a fortified village, and then whatever's after that, which is, let's see, palisade? Wooden fort. Okay, so I think that's our new version of palisade. That's what I've got here, wooden fort. So eventually I'm going to be able to build a wooden fort after, how many turns does that take? After 2 months, 2 turns, and then I'm good to go. And in the late age, though, you're going to have to keep building past this. Right, you've got your wooden fortification. All right, well, you can probably build, I don't know what's going to come after that, palisade, and then you can build a castle, or I guess, and then a fortress, and it changes based on your nation and based on the age you're in, what you're going to be able to build. Different nations have access to different things. So yeah, that's the change to building. I think that covers pretty much all the things that are different between Dominions 4 and 5. The UI is much improved. I think I haven't talked about that this video when I first looked at it. So it's not like drastically different, but there's a nice background scene going on here that wasn't there before. The UI has actual borders and is a little bit better textured. They've changed the font on some of the menu UI. I don't really like this just kind of reeks of like alpha, early access, this thing. I like it better than their old one, which actually had its own graphic and everything and was very in theme. And it looked more professional, but it was actually kind of annoying and you could easily misclick things, and this is a little bit better, ironically, but it looks, I wish they would give it a little background like this. I don't know why they didn't do that. Hopefully they'll patch that in at some point. Overall, I think I really like the new Dominions. They've made a lot of like hidden improvements that are streamed throughout the game. The one thing I didn't really talk about is there's changes to how weapons and armor work, but they aren't all like listed in the manual explicitly, and I haven't had time to test them all, so I don't know what all is different. I know there's some differences, like crossbowmen and archers' strength affects the damage of their weapons, so if you strength buff them, they get more powerful now, which wasn't the case in the past, which is kind of bonkers. It should be a lot of fun. And there's a lot of other small improvements. A lot of nations have been rebalanced. I think this version of the game is a little bit more balanced than Dominions 4, and it's cleaned up some of the issues the community had with the game. I think it's going to be a lot more fun to play. There are some light graphical improvements, and oh yes, there is one thing I completely forgot, which is that there's also a more smoother sort of combat simulator, right? So this game, if you're not familiar, the combat happens in between rounds, right? It's just going on in the background without me. You don't directly control it. You just tell your units what you want them to do ahead of time, right? And then they do it. And where's here we go. The halls? Is that the one? The halls. This isn't gonna go well for me. But so the combat used to be very turn take, right? It would actually the units would actually take turns going. Now it's still a little bit jerky, but it mostly happens in real time. They all go at once, and there's sort of an initiative order, and they'll just hack away. If you have archers, it's a little bit more clear because they'll be shooting constantly and maybe just cast spells as they're available and all this good stuff. And the overall effect is that it looks a little bit better it's a little bit better to watch. There's also some slightly improved effects, like little arrow trails look nice. But it's better to watch because of the smoothness of having it all play at once. And as well as being better to watch, it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Faster. It's much faster. Certain things in the old system kind of hung up and took a long time to complete, like mage spellcasting phases and stuff. And so overall, it's much easier to actually watch a battle and see what happened. I like it. It's a nice improvement. You know, the game's still, if you're into really nice graphics, this is still not the game for you. But they've made a variety of graphical improvements. Some of the new sprites that they've added in, like all the gems are different, and what else am I forgetting? A lot of the resource icons have been changed, and the spell paths have been changed. Right? These aren't the same. Or actually, I think this Earth Magic one is the same. But like the fire one is new. And do I have any water mages or anything here? No. The blood one is the same, but the fire one is new. They've revamped a bunch of little icons and stuff that used to be kind of crappy, and a few nations got revamped sprites of units that were a little bit too old and kind of lost their luster, as it were. So the overall effect has been that the game is a little bit cleaner, and it still looks like it's from 2003, but it looks like a high production value 2003 game. You know, a lot of these little background scenes have, I mean, I almost feel ridiculous complimenting it, but, you know, hey, they've improved the quality of these little crappy background scenes. They've got more foliage and trees in them and whatnot. You know, it looks better. It looks better. It's not pretty, but it still looks better. What else is there to talk about? I think that's it. The UI is a little bit nicer. They've made some actual improvements to the UI. Did I really show off anything super great? Not really. I didn't showcase it, at least. But you know, when you're creating a pretender, they've got a little bit of a better screen now. This screen is much improved. It did not used to be that nice. This screen now has these nice divisions by dominion amount for your different types of pretenders. In-game screens, there's a little bit of a better screen for units setups, right? So you've got like better. Here, let's show it off. No, that's not the one. That's not the one. Army setup screen. So this is new, or rather, it's revamped, and you can give the way you give units orders is a little bit better than it used to be, and the way you set up formations is a bit better than it used to be. They've also changed how leadership works. Gosh, I keep forgetting things. Well, in my defense, I'm pretty sure the leadership thing was not mentioned in their changes in the manual, but maybe it was. I don't think it was. Anyway, leadership is a little bit different now. You have to have more advanced leaders to give your units the more advanced formations, and make no mistake, box and skirmish formation are the worst formations, pretty much. There's a thing about movement where like line formations are slower, and that's a problem for certain things. But for the most part, units don't die as quickly in line formation. You might want to use sparse line formation or double line in certain situations, and now you have to actually recruit quality commanders to do that, which is good because in the previous versions of the game you did not have to do that, and so higher quality commanders actually became a little superfluous. People just wouldn't use them for the most part because they're inconvenient to get a hold of, and it's just not quite worth the effort, right? Okay, so that I think does actually cover it. The movement is different. The research is different. Movement is very much improved. Research doesn't really make a big difference. Roads are pre-built in the game. Recruitment is different, but not in a way that matters for the most part. You have to care about population a little bit more. Weapons and armor interactions are different, but I'm not totally sure how yet. There's very complex bless effects you can do now, and building fortresses and other useful things takes longer to get to the higher quality ones. You have to upgrade your way there. And UI improvements, small graphic improvements. Yep, that's it. Okay, so this is even longer than my other attempt to make a quick overview video, but whatever. At this point, I'm used to all my videos just hitting 30 minutes. Someday I'll actually put in some effort to quality control and editing, and maybe I'll become popular, but I don't think so. It's too much work. Have a nice day.